Predator Badlands being PG-13 isn't a bold new direction. It's a betrayal of the franchise's DNA. History has shown us that watering down R-rated legacies for broader appeal rarely works, and Badlands is shaping up to be the latest casualty of that misguided strategy. Let's rewind for a moment. Before we talk about ratings, before we talk about marketing spin and MPAA loopholes, we need to talk about what Predator actually is, what it represents. Because this isn't just a franchise, it's a legacy. And that legacy was built on experimentation, on subversion, and on a very specific kind of intensity that PG-13 simply can't replicate. The original Predator, released in 1987, wasn't just another 80s action movie. It was, in many ways, an anti-action movie. At the time, the genre was dominated by muscle-bound titans. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Carl Weathers. These guys were cinematic gods, indestructible, bulletproof. They didn't just win, they completely annihilated. And then Predator comes along and says, what if we drop these guys into the jungle and watch them get hunted like animals? What if the biggest, baddest men on Earth were suddenly powerless? What if the rules changed? That's what made Predator revolutionary. It wasn't just the creature design or the one-liners. It was the vulnerability, the fear, the way the film stripped away the myth of the invincible action hero. Dutch doesn't win because he's stronger. He wins because he adapts. He survives by becoming primal, by outsmarting the Predator with mud and traps and sheer desperation. That's not just action, that's horror. That's survival cinema. Then came Predator 2, and the franchise pivoted hard. No more jungle, no more military unit. Instead, we're in the urban sprawl of Los Angeles, dropped into a crime drama with Danny Glover as a street-smart cop facing off against the Predator in a city boiling over with gang violence and corruption. It was gritty, chaotic, and tonally very different from the first film. And yeah, Predator 2 got roasted at the time. Critics didn't know what to make of it, but over the years, thanks to home video, internet forums, and YouTube retrospectives, it's found a second life. It's been reevaluated, reclaimed, and yes, I'm one of those people who genuinely likes Predator 2. It's messy, sure, but it's bold. It expands the lore, it dares to be different. And here's something that often gets overlooked. Predator 2 was the first time we saw a crossover between Predator and Alien. At the end of the movie, when Danny Glover boards the Predator ship, there's a moment, a literal blink and you'll miss it, where a Xenomorph skull is mounted on the wall. It's not acknowledged, it's not explained, but it's there. And whether it was intentional or just a quiet nod, it planted a seed, a visual whisper that these universes might be connected, that the Predator had hunted a Xenomorph before, that the mythology ran deeper than we thought. That single shot sparked decades of speculation. It laid the groundwork for the Alien vs. Predator comics, the arcade game, and eventually the crossover films. And it did all of that without breaking the tone or compromising the story. It was subtle world building, a quiet expansion of the mythos that respected the audience's intelligence. Then we get Predators in 2010, and once again, the formula gets flipped. This time, the humans aren't being hunted on Earth. They've been abducted and dropped onto an alien game preserve. The jungle is back, but the power dynamic is different. These aren't soldiers. They're criminals, mercenaries, outsiders. And the Predators? They're not just hunters anymore. They're a hierarchy, a culture. The film deepens the mythology without diluting the threat. So, just looking at the first three core entries, what do we see? A franchise that reinvents itself with every installment. A franchise that experiments with setting, tone, and character, but never compromises the essence of the Predator. The creature remains lethal, the stakes remain high, the violence remains real. Now, this is an important note, I'm not including Alien vs. Predator in this retrospective, because that's a different beast entirely. That crossover was born from the Dark Horse comics in the 1994 arcade game. It's a fun concept, but it's not really part of the core Predator lineage. And yes, the 2004 AVP was PG-13, but again, it was a spin-off, a side project, not really a mainline entry. Even then, the sequel, AVP Requiem, went back to an R rating. It was darker, bloodier, and leaned harder into horror. Say what you want about the execution, but the intent was clear. Fans wanted intensity, they wanted consequence, and the studio, at least for a moment, listened. Which brings us back to Badlands. The argument being made by comic book resources and many others is that this PG-13 rating is somehow a creative evolution, that it's a chance to explore new territory. But when you look at the franchise's history, you realize that's exactly what Predator has always done. It's always explored new territory, it's always evolved, but it never had to compromise its rating to do it. And that's the key distinction. Reinvention doesn't require dilution. You can be experimental and still be intense. You can shift genres, settings, and protagonists without softening the impact. Predator has done it before, successfully. So why now? Why pull back? Even 2018's The Predator, terrible title by the way, which was widely criticized for its tonal shifts and uneven pacing, never compromised on its rating. It retained the franchise's signature R rating and leaned into the gore, profanity, and chaotic violence that fans had come to expect. Shane Black's installment may have been divisive, but it didn't pull punches. It delivered brutal kills, grotesque creature effects, and a body count that reaffirmed the Predator's lethality. And then there's Predator Killer of Killers, the animated entry that could have easily gone the PG-13 route given its format. But instead, it doubled down. It embraced the R rating with stylized violence, intense action sequences, and a tone that felt more aligned with adult animation like Castlevania or Invincible than anything sanitized for younger audiences. Both films, despite their flaws or niche appeal, understood the assignment. They knew that Predator isn't just about the creature, it's about the carnage, the dread, the sense that survival comes at a cost, and they respected that legacy by refusing to dilute it for broader appeal. Producer Ben Rosenblatt claims that Badlands will still be gruesome, just not in the traditional sense. No humans, no red blood. Instead, we get synth milk, purple goo, and alien ichor, visuals that feel more like Saturday morning cartoon splatter than survival horror. When arterial spray is replicated with fluorescent slime and android leakage, the violence becomes abstract, sanitized. The Predator, once a primal force that made Schwarzenegger look small, now risks becoming a sci-fi mascot, more toyetic than terrifying. The threat is no longer visceral, it's stylized, and when the kills cut away or dissolve into goo, the fear becomes performative. The audience feels the difference. It's a clever workaround, sure, but it's also a loophole, a way to dodge the MPAA's red flags while pretending the stakes haven't changed. But they have, and the genre knows it. This isn't just about gore, it's about tone. It's about the psychological impact of violence. When Dutch's team gets picked off one by one, it's not just a body count, it's a descent into madness. The jungle becomes a crucible. The Predator isn't just a monster, it's a metaphor for survival, for primal fear. You can't replicate that with androids in blue alien blood. You can't fake dread. And we've seen this play out before with many other franchises. The Expendables 3 is a textbook example. The first two films were love letters to 80s action, R-rated, bombastic, and proudly over the top. Then came the PG-13 pivot. The result? A box office flop, the only Expendables movie to lose money up to that point. The studio blamed internet piracy, citing leak on the Pirate Bay weeks before release. I think it was 6 weeks. But Stallone later admitted the real mistake, softening the edge. Fans didn't want a watered-down version. They wanted the chaos, the carnage, the catharsis. Same story with Live Free or Die Hard. The fourth Die Hard movie went PG-13, and the internet dubbed it Die Soft. The unrated DVD tried to course correct, restoring some of the bite, but by then, the damage was done. The theatrical release felt neutered, sanitized, and audiences noticed. This wasn't just a one-off trend, by the way, it was a pattern throughout the 2000s. Studios began double dipping, cutting theatrical releases for mass appeal, then selling the real version on DVD or Blu-ray as an unrated cut. It was a cynical strategy, and fans caught on quickly. The message was clear. The theatrical version was the compromise. The home release was the fix. But by then, the damage was already done. The theatrical experience, the one that shaped public perception, reviews, and box office, was neutered. And horror got hit especially hard during this time. House at the End of the Street with pre-Hunger Games Jennifer Lawrence was PG-13 in theaters, then got an unrated DVD release. The 2008 remake of Prom Night followed the same path. And here's a fun bit of trivia in case if you didn't know this. The original Prom Night from 1980 was initially rated PG, but the producers knew that no one was going to take a slasher movie seriously with a PG rating. So they went back, added more blood, more violence, and pushed it to an R. That's how seriously the rating was taken back then. It wasn't just a number, it was a promise. Fast forward to the late 2000s and early 2010s, and that promise starts to break. Studios were chasing the widest possible audience, trimming content to fit the PG-13 mold, and then padding the home release with stuff that actually made the movie worth watching. It was a bait and switch, let's call it for what it is. And audiences got tired of it. Even Blumhouse, the studio that built its reputation on R-rated horror with The Purge, tried the PG-13 route with Happy Death Day. And they got roasted for it. It was a PG-13 slasher movie. Okay, the backlash wasn't just about gore, it was about trust. Fans felt betrayed. They wanted the intensity that defined the slasher genre, not a watered-down version designed to appease the ratings board. And when these PG-13 experiments fail, studios scramble to course correct. We've seen the apology sequel strategy play out more than once. After the backlash to Live Free or Die Hard, Fox returned with A Good Day to Die Hard in 2013. This time, proudly R-rated. The marketing leaned hard into it as if to say, we heard you, we're back. Same with The Expendables 4 in 2023. After the PG-13 misfire of the third film, Lionsgate made sure everyone knew this one's R-rated, no compromises. But here's the kicker. Both of those films are widely considered the weakest entries in their respective franchises. The damage was already done. The trust eroded. You can't just slap an R rating on a sequel and expect fans to forget the betrayal. These weren't triumphant returns. They were desperate attempts to recapture a spark that had already dimmed. It's a pattern. PG-13 entry alienates the core fanbase. The franchise stumbles, and the studio scrambles to recover with an R-rated sequel that feels more like Damage Control than creative vision. And by the time that the apology film arrives, the momentum is gone. The goodwill is spent, the audience has already recalibrated their expectations, or worse, moved on entirely. This isn't just about ratings, it's about trust. When a franchise like Predator, one that's built its identity on intensity, danger, and consequence, suddenly pulls its punches, fans notice, they feel it, and they don't forget. Because these aren't just movies to them. They're mythologies, they're rituals, they're part of a cultural lineage that stretches back decades. And you know what? It's easy to forget that PG-13 used to mean something. You know, Tremors that released back in 1990 was a PG-13 horror movie, and it didn't pull punches. It had gore, profanity, and a gleeful sense of danger that made it a cult classic. 2002's The Ring was also PG-13, and it terrified audiences with its atmosphere, pacing, and dread. It didn't need buckets of blood. It weaponized silence, shadows, and that cursed videotape. But somewhere along the way, PG-13 got diluted, sanitized, and if you want a perfect example, compare 1997's Anaconda to its sequel, Anaconda's The Hunt for the Blood Orchid, that released in 2004. In the original, John Voight gets strangled and eaten by the snake in a scene that never cuts away. It's brutal, visceral, and unforgettable. In the sequel, every death is off screen. The camera pans away. There's no blood, no impact, just implication. It's horror with the volume turned down. And it's not just creature effects. The ripple effect of the 2004 Janet Jackson Super Bowl incident reshaped the entire media landscape. The MPAA tightened its grip, studios got skittish, and suddenly, even Star Wars wasn't immune. I've always believed that if that halftime show hadn't happened, Revenge of the Sith would have been rated PG, even with Anakin burning alive. The cultural climate shifted, and PG-13 became the new ceiling. Not a middle ground, but a muzzle. This matters because Predator Badlands isn't just PG-13. It's PG-13 in a post-2004 world. A world where intensity is algorithmically trimmed, where violence is stylized into goo and ichor, and where dread is replaced by spectacle. And that's not evolution, that's erosion. This isn't some isolated misstep. Badlands fits into a broader pattern, one where genre storytelling gets systematically softened not for creative reasons, but for market calculus. And when a franchise like Predator, built on intensity and consequence, starts playing by those rules, the damage isn't just tonal, it's existential, which is especially frustrating because Predator earned its legacy through bold reinvention, not repetition, not formula. Each entry took risks. The jungle survival horror of the first film, the urban crime horror of the second, the alien game pursuit of the third. These weren't just sequels, they were evolutions, and yet none of them compromised the tone. They respected the audience's intelligence, trusted the genre's intensity, and never softened the impact. Even Prey, which could have easily been a soft reboot, leaned into the brutality. It didn't shy away from the violence, it embraced it, and audiences responded. It became Hulu's biggest movie ever. That's not a fluke, that's a signal. A reminder that fans want authenticity, they want intensity, they want stories that respect the legacy. But here's the part that gets overlooked. Prey didn't just return to form, it pushed the franchise forward. It experimented. It stripped away the modern military hardware, the wisecracking action heroes, the high-tech bravado. Instead, it brought us back to the jungle, but this time through the eyes of a young Comanche woman in the 18th century North America. No commandos, no helicopters, just a tribe of indigenous warriors grounded in a brutal survivalist culture facing off against a technologically superior alien hunter. It was primitive society versus high-tech society, spears and tomahawks against cloaking devices and laser-guided weaponry. And yet, it never felt like a mismatch, because the film understood what Predator has always been about: adaptation, strategy, the will to survive. The Predator may have had the gadgets, but the Comanche had the terrain, the instincts, the grit, and that dynamic, low-tech versus high-tech, human cunning versus alien precision, felt more true to the spirit of the original film than anything we'd seen in years. Prey didn't need to be loud to be intense. It didn't need to be modern to be relevant. It honored the franchise's roots while telling a story that felt fresh, grounded, and culturally specific. And that's why it worked, because it didn't just respect the legacy, it added to it. So the question isn't whether Badlands will be good. The question is whether it will feel like Predator, whether it will honor the legacy, whether it will respect the Covenant. And based on everything we've seen so far, the answer seems to be no. Because when you strip away the blood, the brutality, and the fear, you're not just changing the rating, you're changing the genre. You're turning survival horror into sci-fi spectacle. And while spectacle has its place, it's not what Predator was built on. This franchise thrived because it respected its own mythology. It evolved, yes, but it never diluted. And that's what makes Badlands so frustrating, because the franchise has already proven that it can be experimental without losing its edge. So if Badlands fails to deliver, it won't be because the concept was flawed, it'll be because the execution was compromised, because the studio chose reach over resonance, and history has shown us, time and time again, that when you chase everyone, you often lose the ones who matter the most.